to another RCA Fundamentals bite-sized video from the team at What Caused This. Today we're going to be looking at one of the most essential parts of root cause analysis, which is the visual analysis, the cause and effect logic that underpins the analysis that takes place in any good RCA. I'm going to use the What Caused This software today as a tool to demonstrate causal logic visibly, but of course this logic is transferable to post-it notes and whiteboards or whatever tool you happen to have handy. I'm going to use an example of a spilled water event to demonstrate how causal logic works. And therefore my focal point on this particular RCA chart is very simple. It is spilled water. The event took place when a bottle of water that was sat on my desk was knocked over by yours truly, leaving water, rather embarrassingly, all over my desk. So if we're going to build out this particular cause and effect chart, we use our classic causal logic and we ask, well, what caused this? Why have we got spilt water? And very simply, as I explained, I knocked a bottle over. There we go. That's basic cause and effect. A caused by B. The focal point was caused by me knocking the bottle over. Now, some of you might be familiar with something called 5 whys, which is a linear approach to causal logic. And of course, if we were practicing that method, we would have one simple question to ask at this point, and that is why I knocked the bottle over. But in actual fact, 5 whys, as is well documented by many RCA specialists, is a little too simple, a little too linear to give us a full explanation of what happened. So actually that's not the question we ask if we're trying to flex our causal logic muscles. In fact, the question we ask is, every time I knock over a bottle, do I always end up with spilt water? And by asking that question, we start to build what are known as causal sets. We're looking at combinations of causes that must have happened simultaneously. And of course, in this case, there are a couple of other causes that are sufficient, necessary and sufficient to create this spilt water effect. The knocking over of the bottle is definitely a necessary cause for spilt water in the example I'm looking at, but it's not sufficient on its own. So what else must have been at play at the same time? Well, clearly there must have been water in the bottle, because if I knock over a bottle that is dry, that has no water in it, we simply couldn't have had a spilt water event. So I'm going to add that to my chart. Water in bottle. And now we can see we've got an emerging causal set of 2 causes that have created the spilt water event. A bottle that was knocked over and water being in that bottle. And we're almost there, aren't we? But actually some of you may have already realised that we're missing at least one more cause. And the obvious cause that we're missing is that water had to be able to escape the bottle in some way. Because if I knocked over a bottle and that water was securely sealed within the bottle, we wouldn't have a spilt water event. So in this particular example, the third cause is no lid on the bottle. And there we go. Using that simple example of spilled water, we can see a really clear difference between the linear approach, which sends us off down one causal chain only, and the causal sets, the branching that is far more representative of events, even simple ones like this, in real life. Now, once we've created that causal set, once we've revealed the necessary causes to create that specific effect, in this case of spilt water, we then have the option to explore each one of those in turn. There's no obligation to explore each one in turn. It may well be that if we've got a causal set of, say, 3 causes, as we have in this example, that we may only need to explore 1 or 2 of them, and perhaps 1 or maybe 2 of them need no explanation. They are simply causes that we have no need to explain or no requirement to explain. I would argue that perhaps in this example, the fact that there was water in a bottle that I used to quench my thirst probably doesn't really need much further inquiry. So that would be the typical type of cause that we'd probably be quite happy that we'd recognised, that we'd seen. But actually, the path analysis in this particular instance is complete. But actually, why I knocked the bottle over and why there was no lid on the bottle at the time of it being knocked over, well, maybe those are worth an investigation. So there we go. There's our examples there of causal logic at play, enabling us to get that wider scope on an RCA and break free of the confines of the very linear 5 whys method. I hope that's been helpful. If you've any comments or questions, please add them below and we'll do our best to answer those. Thank you.